Hey guys, by the way, my name is Manish. What I'm going to talk about is basically how does the code LLM has actually gone over a period of time, right? What does it, which AI is bringing us as we as a front-end developer, right? And that is what my focus area has gone from last couple of years. Front-end, back-end evolution, this is something which is very core to my heart, the developer evolution, right? How we as a human has evolved in terms of AI, right? How does the corporate has turned up for us? And then impact of LLM on industry, and especially on us. A lot of us being a salaried workforce, right? How does AI is impacting? No corporate gimmick, no jargons, just the raw content. So a lot of people, just one disclaimer, guys. A lot of people may not like it, but that's how I talk, right? Just be crisp and clear. Nothing about in terms of corporate diplomatic conversation, which I get into. Now, this is about me. 15 years of hardcore developer experience, all into. I'm a mobile architect by profession. 2 years with a startup, 10 years with Samsung, last 4 years with Walmart. And now I'm trying to figure out what else I can do, right? So this is who am I. So let's get into this, right? Since this is a React Native architecture, how do I start my talk? Even before talking about architecture of how does the React Native old system actually works. And this is very core to my heart, where I get a lot of interview candidates, right? Where I expect people to know about architecture. And that's the reason I just brought this slide up. A lot of you will know, right, that React Native is by Meta, Facebook, which the whole USP of React Native when it turned up, right, is to basically discard a web view. I don't know how many of you have actually seen web view based development. Has anyone of you seen web view based UIs? They are few, right? So during a web view, we used to always have a problem, which is called performance. How do I render it fast? And then, even though you are able to bring it on both Apple as well as Android or Google, the performance is always a major factor for a lot of us, right? And that's the reason when Meta brought this up, Meta was using it all internally in their teams. It was for the first time when they brought it up publicly. That's why it gave us a lot of goosebump to us, right? That what's that? How they are able to bring it without using a web view? And that's the whole science through which they brought it up, which is a bridge. If you see a React Native code base, you will realize the whole magic that happens, React Native does it, is always via bridge, right? How do you serialize? When you write a code in your JavaScript, how does the JavaScript code actually go and sit onto my device, right? What really happens? So you write a code in JavaScript, you have a bridge which is being running. You have your Java corresponding iOS code base sitting out. How does your JavaScript code actually talks with it, right? It's all a bridge. It's basically a serialization technique that Facebook have mastered it. It's very difficult. It's not a simple JSON. It's a very, the coupling, the masking that they do it is one of the game changer. And that's the reason this bridge became a great hit. And when initially Meta launched this, right, it was all about basically the serialization and deserialization. The USP was this, but over a period of time, this bridge, which was magic once upon a time, became a great blocker for a lot of optimization that we were trying to do it along the line. The first thing was always serializing by nature or deserializing is always a challenging problem. It's not easy, right? And the biggest problem that we face while you play around with JSON is always doing it asynchronously. That's a major blocker for us. You do it. You cannot do it in one shot. You will have to put a worker thread on and then do the serialization. That's the whole thing, which became a blocker. Now, if you see, the new thing, the new architecture which has turned up from 0.76, right? This has become a game changer. Now, here there's no bridge. I mean, I'm sure all of you are already aware of it. There's no bridge concept. It's basically the JSI which became a game changer. Right, JavaScript interfaces, which basically says that you guys do not have to convert into any JavaScript code base into JSON. Right, so how does that under the hood works is basically C++ engine, which they brought it up. The C++ engine is responsible for talking with your JavaScript code with API called as JSI. And this JSI internally talk with your Android was something called as JNI. Java Native Interface, or the corresponding stuff for Apple. That has become a great game changer. Okay, let me go quickly into the next one. So the problem statement which I'm trying to solve here, right, is how does the front-end system and code LLMs has evolved, right? What really happens to, if I just go back, when does the front-end and back-end, right? Just to begin with it, let me go ahead with the time when I started my career. I started my career to look out into the mainframe servers initially. Okay, and when the mainframe system turned up, the best part of mainframe system were actually that nobody actually understood any code. Debugging in COBOL is one of the nightmare. It's one of the difficult problem to play around. There's no specific IDs. There's no specific tools, right? But this was good for us Because when COBOL or mainframe were there, right, it is very easy to goof up with your manager. Once you say it, right, even an issue that can be solved in a one day, you would probably would have ended up saying that I need 1 week. That was a good advantage when nobody knew anything. And then we turned up to something called as JSP and C++ server, right, which became very popular. Over a period, Java brought a lot of changes in the industry. And along with that, C++ based off backends were also there. And this is where the whole game changer happened. When we brought up Spring Boot, the backend way of designing API, where a lot of banks, a lot of finance, a lot of industries have started turning up their game into Spring Boot, still being running very nicely, right? And extremely compliance. The biggest advantage that I see along with Spring Boot is the compliance. It passes all my compliance. Even you are a bank, you are a finance, you are a healthcare, it passes it. That's the security that comes along with it. Then you get into Node.js, right? This is where my most of experience has gone into. I am from a JavaScript engine background, guys, right? So when Node.js turned up, this is the first time in my life where we saw a JavaScript engine came out of a browser. We never saw anything like that before. We never thought about it, in fact. Right, and this is where Node.js brought us the whole change that you write a code in pure JavaScript without having a browser. To run any code that you run in a JavaScript, right? We typically use a compilation techniques. We play around, we create an abstract syntax tree, put it into the parser, read it, and then optimize it. Right? And we all need a JavaScript engine to make it happen. But none of us have ever been able to do it porting of engine outside the browser. Google did that. Right, and this became good hit for us. And then Python base, right? This is a Django, Flask, whatever you call it. This is how the backend has evolved. And then, okay, let me quickly get into it. Go to the next slide. Golang. Golang is one of the very easy thing. If you haven't explored it, just go ahead and explore it. You'll love it. It's one of the most easiest language that I have seen in my 15 years of career. I mean, I don't see anybody learning a language in a day. With Go, you can actually do that. And then you have something called as the architecture, right? Through which industry runs. So initially we started with a monolithic. You bring up the whole war file or whatever you call it as your backend deployment in one single shot, right? This was a USP. So you create a simple project, put all your STPI into it, bring it live, right? And then we turned up, the next architecture was service oriented, where we said that we created a story of that how does the code reusability will happen. So we wanted to reuse the code across multiple backends, and we named it like this. And then, okay, then turned up my microservices, which is a major hit now. Still people use it, and it solves a lot of our problem, right? It's easy to write, easy to abstract the code base around it, and easy to put a deployment without making all your backend down, right? Kafka. Kafka is something which is very close to my heart. It's an event processing system. The whole industry runs on this. If you haven't explored it, guys, I will strongly suggest you to move around Kafka. See how does, basically, I don't promote Kafka, but what I say is distributed messaging system is the era which we are living in. Even though we come out from a front-end community, it's very, very important to understand how does the whole system really works around, right? Spend your time on distributed computing. A lot of we are a true computer science engineer, guys. So if you don't understand distributed computing, you really don't understand any software fundamentals. That's the reason I promote distributed computing heavily. Then the process of you putting deployments, right? Docker, Kubernetes, a standard way, nothing rocket science. Okay, now turns up the front-end system. When we started coding in HTML, pretty basic, right? And then you landed up with VB, AWT, and then HTML5, JavaScript, pretty standard. Angular, React became a game changer for a lot of us, where we realized the virtual DOM concept, right? Where we said that, okay, now you don't really, reconciliation is a great problem to solve around, right? But how does that really happen? It's just a data structure pattern, guys. If you read reconciliation, right, what is a virtual DOM? It's just a data structure to figure out what is being rendered, what your code is doing, figure out the difference and put it onto the screen, right? So people promote a framework. But what really made the framework great, right, is what we really, as a true software engineer, is what we really should get into it, right? I'm very amazed that when I go to interviews and all, and I ask them how does the virtual DOM works, people still don't understand this. So you will have to go deeper into the React Native code base to get through this. And then, okay, this is server-side rendering, which became very common, saying that SEO was the problem for a lot of us, right? Where you wanted to index your site on Google search and all that stuff. So we said, okay, you render it on a server, throw the whole HTML back to the client so that our page gets indexed, right? And then you turned up WebAssembly. This is something which is a browser big breakthrough for us, right? You have a something called as WebAssembly engine, right? Where we are able to execute all your Python, all your specific language code base, and make it work across the DOM. Right. This is if anybody have not explored WebAssembly, I will strongly encourage you. Code in your own language, play around with DOM. Right. It works very nicely. Okay. So if I go just down, right, how does the technology has evolved? What made, right? We start with X, then we move into Y, then we move into Z, right? Why the technology evolves, right? What made people? Is it all about the business? That really, or is it the consumer, we as people, right, who is driving the technology? Right, the first reason foremost, definitely, it's always the performance, the faster. We are sitting out in a machine, in a time where time complexity is the major problem that everyone is trying to solve. Space complexity, people are okay about it. People are okay to buy extra disk. People are not okay to buy CPUs. But right, because that's a brain, that costs us. So the more you focus on time, right, is something which every time you take less time to render it, that is what we strongly encourage, right? And that's the reason whole framework, even React, pure JavaScript, or the next version of JavaScript is being evolving on performance. Ease of development, obviously, I mean, we are a developer, right? So we want to make it easy for all of us. So that's how the frameworks evolve. You have a less code getting the same job done. Faster time to market. This is what our leadership writes, right? This is how the business actually drives. The faster you get into the market, the more chances that you're likely going to succeed. Cost effective, okay. This is something which I'll skip for now, we all know. Okay, life before Code LLM, guys. When LLMs were not there, right, what really happened? The best thing was Stack Overflow support, self-thinking, right? I mean, we used to think it, right? We never got any solution in one attempt. We think it, we debug it, we figure out, and then we finally used to plug it, right? That's how we used to do it. And that was a very right approach, if you ask me. Any solution or any process which makes you think is good for us. I mean, that's the whole reason for which we joined software industry, right? We wanted to think. That's the reason I got into software, right? I wanted to design drivers or kernels or whatever you call it, right? That's the reason we got through it. So these are the good advantages that I find it. Okay, the advantages that I see around LLMs, right? A typical, a clear-cut advantage is obviously the test cases, right? I'm sure all of us will agree that the moment you put your code base in the front of any LLM model, it is able to derive all your use cases, test cases very fast. Even though you have a multiple library dependency, LLMs are becoming smarter day by day to understand your dependency and make the test cases run. Auto suggestion, right, is a cursor or whatever. It's a co-pilot way of coding where you have somebody sitting out with you. Business context. So initially we thought, right, when when the LLM started, we thought this is not something which is going to understand your business. But when I look in the past and when I look today, you realize, I mean, the moment you buy an enterprise edition and you open your project, right, everything is being understood very well by LLMs. They are becoming mature and reality. You put any third-party library, you put the complex code, you put the legacy code, LLMs are becoming very smart. And this is proven for, when we did a benchmarking on it, right, for 15 days, I realized that almost every single test case which I had in my mind, right, was being able to solve nicely with LLMs. Will reduce TTM, right, time to market. Yeah, this is where I see a lot of corporates are still using LLMs is because to create the benchmark. Let it be in front end or back end, right? The moment you will have to, somebody tells you that how do I evaluate this tech with respect to the business problem, right? Creation of POCs is become very easy. Previously, when I used to start with POC, I used to say it will tell me, it will take me 15 days, 10 to 15 days to give you the KPIs, what you need. Right, today they ask me in a day, can you give me the KPI whether if I use this tech, will it work for our use case or not? This is where I want you to understand, guys, that coding, right, at a very granular level is slightly being automated by LLMs. So where we bring as our USP, the more business you understand, right, the better for us. Even if you do not understand code at a very extreme granular level, it's okay. But if you have to really go longer in this corporate world, right, it's better to understand the business. Business people always drives. If you ask me in IT industry, I haven't seen a people who are smarter than sales guys in IT. Sales people are the most smartest that I've seen, even though they do not understand tech. But if you attend their client meetings, you will realize that these people, the way they polish their words, right? They are able to answer everything. They are another LLMs for me, if you ask. They answer very smartly. And that is where I spend most of my time nowadays with sales guys to understand how do they answer something which they really don't know. That's an art. And we developers are highly terrible in it, right? So focus more on the business context, that will help us. Okay, the general side effect, right? Less thinking. How many of you think, guys, that LLMs, today's LLMs, are making you less think? You think less now. Almost, if I say, what, 50% of the population, right? So, I mean, I'm very confused, right? Even when I wanted to put this benchmarking data, that on what basis will I put this? That are we thinking less? And after talking with multiple stakeholders, what I realize, it depends on us. We are responsible for this. If you're thinking less, you are responsible, not LLMs. LLMs are just a tool, right? So the faster you understand that if LLMs give you a lot of data in one shot, it's your duty to understand it. Everything copy pasting on your code base will not work. You will have to think. You may also have to Google it along with LLMs. But understand the context very well. Understand each and every single line that LLM throws at you. Even in terms of trying to reprompt, as well as for your own mental wellness. Understanding what system throws you should be your first priority. Okay, this is what we all are aware. I would have been very happy if India becomes the creator of LLM. Okay, it gives you an immense job, right? And I wanted to get into that space, but I realize India is not working on LLMs. We are making as the end user, right? And I would have been very happy if we create the product for other industries, right? We as a software should create a product for manufacturing, healthcare and all, right? But we as a developer are creating a product for ourselves. LLMs, right? Code LLMs. This is what I'm slightly against it, but you can't make that stop, right? These are the truth which we have to live with. So the better is at least that if you guys still have, say, I assume most of us will have less than 10 years of experience in corporate, right? Typically, I assume. If you want really a more juice in the game, the faster you get into the data engineering, right? As one of your additional skill set, I strongly feel that will be a better approach in the current context. Yeah, this is what I'm slightly saying, that when you give a lot of info, right? Human mind is unable to digest it, right? You throw a lot of info and I end up reading only one line. Baki all I just copy paste and move into the other part of my ID. This is another problem, right? This is very true problem. Okay, guys, the media has created so much of hype buzzword, right? Let it be an Indian or let it be typical on a world stage, right? AI has become so hype that every Tom and Dick Harry will come and give you a gyan on AI LLMs, right? They'll tell you, Manish, can't you do it yourself within a day and show me the POC? And when I tell them that you do it yourself, right? Figure out how do you do. So the problem is this is in the hype, but this is a dust or a noise which I think that over a period of time it should settle down. People will understand that what is that which is possible practically and what is that which is not. At this point, including the UX, including the product, right, has become very hype about it because they do not understand anything that you code, right? But they will tell you, can't you prompt and bring up because what really happens under the hood is a lot of workshops, right? People started demonstrating the projects in 1 hour, 2 hour, right? Building from scratch just by prompt. And that created a lot of wrong mindset. Right? The more faster you prompt, the better product you get it, the faster you get it. But in reality, we all know it does not happen that way. Even just to build a product, right? Sometimes I end up taking one single day. We all know the realities, right? So, small team. This is where it's happening, and it's been happening from the day one, but teams are getting smaller day by day, right? And that's how it is. Yeah, so... for us, right? What is that which is being happening? Expectations are rising, guys, from each developer. I understand that if I was at your place at probably 1-2 years of experience, I would have been actually, slightly tense. And that's the reason I see Gen Z is more tense now, right? And what is that which you will have to do, right? Is first of all understand that this is a dust which is likely to settle down. People will have a realistic expectation that projects cannot be built in a day, right? If it was being built, I mean, there's no need of any other person, right? Project take time, and you will have to get the expectation right. So while talking with your managers, right, or somebody who don't code, we as a developer, it's our duty to make them explain that what are different things that we will have to do it, and how does the prompt will help me, and where does the prompt may not help me. Developers have a very bad habit of saying yes to everything that they do. Anytime your manager asks, right, just because you want a rating or whatever reason, I don't care. But you will have to understand that you will have to set the realistic expectation with your managers. Until you do it, we as a developer community cannot grow. You will have to understand this. This is the reality where everyone's expectation have gone up. So what is that which you have to do it is understand that IT, your borderline, right, where you used to say once upon a time, I'm a React guy, I'm a Node.js guy, that is diminishing. People need architect in every single guy. Okay, and going forward, this will go up. Right, so as a front-end engineer, if you do not understand backend, that's a problem which you are landing up. Just by limiting into a front-end or limiting into a backend or limiting into a specific scope is not going to help you. The faster, you will have to, see, it's a simple rule. Be a master at least in one tech, but be aware of all other tech that's been happening. That way is what? Either by attending meetings or either by attending workshops, but you should be aware of it, that if somebody throws you a jargon, say if I throw you a jargon of RAG, right? If you don't understand, then it's a problem. If you haven't coded, it's okay. You have coded in one specific tech, but you need to understand everything that's been happening. Previously, it was okay not to know it, but now it does not work. Yeah, so this is what my point was, that be aware of deployment, API design, right? Design principles, how do you break your system, right? You will, for better prompting, you will have to also know that how does the system build? What are different solid principle, clean architecture? These are very standard, guys. A lot of people have forgotten this, but this is where we have built the whole software industry, right? And this is more important now. I'm sure all of today's folks really speak well. They will be able to break down the problem. They will be able to articulate well. But for those of us who really don't know, right, that articulation is a great skill. And the people who really speak well, maybe in terms of when your manager is there or not there, doesn't matter. You speak well, you articulate, you break down the problem well. These are the people who will survive. They have been surviving from very long, in fact, if you ask. But now it has become far more relevant, given that we are getting into the generation of noises because of LLMs. You have far more data. It's important for you to segregate the data and articulate in a way where you make them explain to corresponding stakeholders. Okay, I am good to go. Thank you, guys. Thank you.